on a MacBook. So
Hello, my name is Darnell Smith, and today we have Dr. Derek Greenfield. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us for the third MOA webinar of the school year, Strategies on Leading from Where You Are. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I would like to make you aware of. If you haven't already done so, make sure you have renewed your MOA membership and encourage colleagues to do the same. Please remember that the MOA Symposium Early Bird Registration deadline is Wednesday, May 30th. If you haven't already registered, do so today. Just a reminder that if you haven't logged into the MOA community, I encourage you to do so. The community is the primary location for many helpful resources. To access the community, simply visit moa.nacda.com. That's moaa.nacda.com. If you have any questions regarding MOA membership in general, please don't hesitate to contact either Cassandra Garcia or Julie Work at the national office at 440-892-4000. Now, for today's webinar, if you have any questions throughout the course of the live webinar, feel free to use the chat feature on the bottom right part of your screen. Please note there will be a brief question and answer session at the conclusion of today's webinar, and the majority of questions will be addressed during that time. Today, we are extremely fortunate to have Dr. Derek Greenfield, a visionary speaker, consultant, and thought leader dedicated to inclusive excellence and positive change. His powerful keynotes and workshops on issues such as diversity and inclusion, motivation, team building, student development, and leadership. We are fortunate to have Dr. Greenfield with us today, and we'll turn the program over to him for our discussion. Dr. Greenfield, the floor is yours.
thank you so much, Darnell, and thank you, MOA, for the opportunity to share. I'm honored to have this chance to talk a little bit about something that I'm passionate about, leading from where you are, authentic and transformational leadership. Now, of course, those of you who've seen me before know that I like to do all kinds of interactive stuff, participatory. So unfortunately, obviously, the webinar format doesn't quite allow us that same degree of flexibility, but I think we're still going to have some fun. So again, thanks for joining me. I know how busy people are wrapping up the school year, and so I'm just excited to be able to have some time to share. So let's get right to business. So, we talk about leadership. My first opportunity as a leader, and I thought I'd have a little laugh at myself as we begin. There I was. Can you figure out which one I am? I'm the third from the left. I was the section leader for the middle school jazz band. But, all throughout our lives, we get opportunities to serve in leadership capacities, whether they're formal or informal. People are always watching us. People are always looking at who we are and what we're doing. It might be in our families, and maybe our colleagues, our students, folks who are always paying attention. So let's make sure that indeed we're leading with the best possible skills. And I don't know if my clothes represent that, but nonetheless, that was me back in the day. And so here's some of the things that I've done throughout my journey. I've been a coach, so for those of you obviously in athletics can appreciate what that entails. My first job out of college, I was a youth worker and then became supervisor of some youth programs we had out of juvenile court. I then moved on as a youth worker to run a youth program on the west side of Chicago. The title was project coordinator, but I had a chance to lead a staff and a group of young people in terms of youth empowerment initiatives. I was a professor for over 20 years, served for 3 years as chief diversity officer at Alcorn State University in that role. And then I last year completed a 3-year leadership fellowship with the Kellogg Foundation with 120 other leaders from across the country, and had a chance to really develop some of my skills and thinking around the issues that perhaps we'll talk about today. I've also been a mentor. As I mentioned, people are always watching. And I take that role seriously. I remind people that I mentor, it's not just sort of a casual relationship. That to me, I really want it to be more of a friendship than a mentorship. That indeed, I recognize that my role is one to hopefully guide and to advise, but that we have to have that authentic friendship, something that allows me to be my full self. Because when I can be my true authentic self and to share who I am, then I think that those who are mentored by me really feel more connected. They're willing to take more risks in sharing, and then we can have some deep conversations that otherwise might not happen if it feels more formal as opposed to that kind of friendship capacity. And so this notion of authentic leadership, I think, is so critical for us to highlight. To be you. To really think about, and in a world that often tries to constrain us, especially folks who may come from marginalized communities, it's so often that we're kind of kept from being our authentic self. And the most powerful thing we can do for ourselves and folks who work with is to let them know if you can be yourself, then they can too. And that you're creating space for authentic, honest relationships and presentations of self. So people can be confident that who they are will be accepted and respected, obviously in that spirit of inclusive excellence that many of you have heard me talk about. But that when people indeed feel that from you, then they know they can be their true liberated selves, and how critical that is to get the best out of folks, for them to be exactly who they are. And recognizing authentic leadership means we're going to make mistakes, and that acknowledging that and being honest about saying, hey, we made some mistakes. I think that picture might have been a mistake in the way I looked, but nonetheless, it references a time when I was in the Chief Diversity Officer role at Alcorn. And here I am in this role, building inclusive excellence, celebrating community, challenging folks to look at their biases. And I made a decision with our team to bring in the first gay male couple that was featured in the Jet magazine wedding section. And certainly many of you would say, what a wonderful opportunity for folks to celebrate all types of relationships and to learn about the history of marriage and the way in which it's evolved over time, and to learn from folks who are leaders, willing to take risks in Mississippi to go against the grain. Unfortunately, there were a lot of haters, a lot of people that weren't quite ready for that experience several years ago. And we faced backlash and criticism. And what we learned from that is it didn't go the way that it should have. And we didn't have the kind of community response. The mistake I made as a leader was not recognizing that in that particular community, here we are in rural Mississippi, that you kind of have to go to the elders to get sort of permission or to get kind of their approval, to get a little bit of support, because you got to build community support when you're challenging people to look at things they weren't quite ready to take a look at. And I didn't do that. We kind of applied a different model that we're just going to do it, and we know it's the right thing to do. We were morally right, but strategically wrong. And people didn't feel like we sort of honored where they were and were willing to kind of meet them and guide them into this sort of more advanced and inclusive space. I was proud of the fact that as a leader, we kept going. We could have given up and canceled the event based on, there was media attention, people came out. It was just, in many ways, such a painful experience, but we kept going. And I was proud that I stayed the course. But I learned so much, and I had to look at myself in terms of what I may have done wrong, but also being willing to admit those folks who were working with that mistakes were made. And this is how we grow. Last year, one of my mentees hit me up and sent me a text and said, Doc, I'm thinking of applying for this job. And I clicked the link, and it was the City of Seattle Race Relations Institute manager. And the job required 5 to 7 years of management experience and a graduate degree. Well, he hadn't finished undergrad yet, and he'd never supervised anybody. But as a millennial, he could be CEO the first day, right? And I replied, typical for my generation, and what I thought was an appropriate mentorly thing to do, by saying, did you read the job description? And he replied back and he said, well, gee, thanks, Doc. And you could hear the sarcasm dripping through the phone. I had to apologize. I had to admit that I was wrong. And sometimes leaders are unwilling to do that. They think they have to be, quote unquote, strong, or present that sort of, game face and never let them see you sweat. And I think it's powerful for us as leaders to say, I made a mistake. I apologize. And not that fake apology, I'm sorry if you were offended, but a true, authentic apology that says, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was my fault. What can I do to make it right? And Ishmael responded, well, Jack, I know we got love for each other. I'm not mad at you. He said, sometimes, though, when I shoot for the moon, I just want to know you got my back. And folks, those we work with and those who do report to us, they just want to know that we got their back when they shoot for the moon. They want to know that we're willing to take some risks and support them and be there for them so they can be their full and their best selves. And indeed, when we're right, remember, shut up when you're right and admit it when you're wrong. Be willing to say it, and also don't have to put it in anybody's faces. Folks know, but also the fact that you're willing to say, it's okay, we got it right, not me got it right in that case, when indeed you have moments to celebrate for success. So one of the things I was asked to mention was this notion of EQ and emotional intelligence, or the emotional quotient. And certainly while we want to be IQ smart, we want to have great knowledge and ability in those domains, it's really important for us to think about the power of relationships, especially when we're talking about young folks. And, young folks don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And indeed, in the workplace, the power of relationships, even though people say, well, we're here to do a job and you don't bring your personal in, we can't help but be who we are. And when people know that you understand them and care about them and love them, and indeed, as you say in this slide, that EQ helps get the right people in the right place to be emotionally connected to folks, to know what they need at the time that they need it, to know who can best serve in that particular role requires more than just that technical knowledge, more than just the skill set that people teach you at in terms of grad school or on the job training, but the people stuff. Those aren't soft skills. It's hard to get it right, but it's so critical that we do it. And remember, getting people in the right place at the right time also means that we want to encourage people to keep growing and to keep going. Sometimes people may need to be pushed and say, you know what, I want you to move on to new opportunities. If we sort of are selfish and try to keep everybody for the entire time that we're there, we're not letting people grow. I always would tell my staff, I want you to have my job. The goal is that someday I've prepared you and that you felt empowered enough to take over and that I've propelled you to the next level. And it does indeed require that we have that emotional connection. Many of you have heard of the golden rule that we treat others the way that we want to be treated. I have the platinum rule. Platinum's worth more than gold. And the platinum rule in this case is that we treat people not the way we want to be treated, but we treat people the way they want to be treated. Let me say that again. We treat people the way they want to be treated. We may need particular things. Maybe we're not somebody who needs affirmations and love and support, but for those who do, we've got to do it because that's what they need to be able to function indeed at their absolute best. And to do that means we've got to understand folks and their strengths. Building off of their strengths, not what's wrong, we need to fix what's wrong, but when you build off of what people do well, then indeed they're more likely to want to correct some of the deficiencies they may have. That they really believe that you honor and recognize where their talents are and are willing to search those out. And while hopefully our staff members or colleagues are not strangers to us, I want to use that 5 dimension. Maybe you spend some time each week identifying somebody you don't know in your unit and have coffee with them. Do that now, even if you're not supervising anybody. Find somebody who may be indeed parallel in a position to you, maybe a supervisor or maybe somebody who reports to you, and each week take 15 minutes to have a cup of coffee. Get to know them, build relationships, find out what matters to them. Write it down so you can reference that the next week when you see them or when you call them or send them an email and say, I know, Matt, last week you told me that your mom was sick. How's she doing? Have that coffee, build the relationships, and remember. Because indeed, the question is, would you want to work for you? And you want to be the kind of person that people say they bring out the best in folks. They're the ones who indeed challenge us. I love this picture from a couple of years ago, this head coach in football who did the worst dab in human history. And it didn't matter that it looked awkward. It didn't matter that he'd probably never done one before. It didn't matter if he knew anything about hip-hop culture. If you see the young man toward the bottom right, the smile, the cheers, they screamed with delight. They were saying, you're willing to meet us where we are. You're willing to kind of be a bit vulnerable and take a risk and be bold and just see us as important to connect with. And we'll be willing to run through walls for you if you're willing to do that for us. And indeed, as you transition from place to place, spend some time learning the people and learning the culture. When you move on to a new place, before you sort of jump in and make decisions, especially in a leadership role, take time to learn where people are at. Learn the traditions that matter to folks. Even if you want to change something, great. But there may be something that's so special to people that if you change everything, they're going to feel like you didn't honor what they built, what they think is important. So learn the culture, learn the people, learn the values of the community, learn the language, learn so that you indeed have people recognizing that you value who we are. And hopefully then as we jump on board, we'll want to go where you want to take us. And indeed, the research is clear. Here's actual studies that have been published that show that employees who feel love perform better. This isn't just because it's nice and cute. When people feel love, they perform better. As Dr. Maya Angelou said, that she learned that people forget what you say and they forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. And so it's critical for us to think about, how do people feel when they're with us? How do people feel when we're in their presence? And indeed, for ourselves and for others, you can't drink and can't fill from an empty cup. So make sure that ourselves and each other are emotionally filled so that people can be at their best. Maybe an idea that I thought of last week. What if you took 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month, and you challenge folks that work with you and challenge those, especially that report to you, to do an hour for themselves of self-care. It might be to do yoga. It might be to take a class. It might be volunteerism, whatever it might be, to tell them 1 hour out of the week. And I know we go, oh my God, people are so busy and we got so much to accomplish. But one of the things I learned in my Kellogg Fellowship is the power of self-care. And that we are so busy trying to do everything that if we are indeed are not operating at our full capacity, if our oil tank is not full, if the engine is not running right, doesn't matter how hard we're trying to rev the engine, we're not going to go at our best. So maybe think about how people will feel so valued saying, I just want you to do something for you 1 hour a week. You're giving 39 plus to us. Take one for you and celebrate people. Really recognize when folks do well. They want to know that you see it, because that's the difference between transactional and transformational leadership. Transactional leadership, like a bank or a vending machine, you put money in, you get the soda out. Nothing transformational happens. It's just you do the job, I do the job, and you get your paycheck, we're done. But transformational leaders are ones who say, I want this place to be better because I'm here. That people feel valued, that people feel like, they want to give more. You don't have to make people work harder. Sometimes leaders have the mistake of doing when you come in and you have to change things, or when things are underperforming, you push people hard. Sometimes you get more resistance. But if people feel like you respect them and honor them, they'll want to be at their best. And so transformational leaders transform the spaces that they're in. They don't lead by punishment. They don't lead by, what could go wrong. They lead by inspiration and hope and the belief in people, and that when indeed people know that you value their perspectives and their input, they're going to contribute more. A boss kind of leads from behind, but a leader says, I'm with you. I'm with you right here in the trenches for the work we do. So this slide may help just offer some of the dimensions you want to think about for transformational leaders. Then on the intellectual side, to make sure that you're thinking of being clear about what goals, and obviously the collaborative goals. People, when they create them with you, anything you own, you treat better than something you rent. And so then when people are able to indeed kind of create the rules together, when people are able to sort of come up with the goals together, indeed they're more committed to that process. So the intellectual side, to be clear and innovative, willing to take intellectual risks and have clear goals. The individual side, to really know people and to think about what their strengths are, and to mentor and be willing to say, everybody in here I work with has something special. We have a connection that nobody else has. I do presentations where everybody does a fun handshake. If everybody knows you know them personally, it means so much to them. The idealized influence, to be that role model who walks the walk, not just talks the talk. And that inspiration, people are looking for that. They want to know that they're valued, and they want to know that indeed you believe, even when things are challenging, that you believe and have hope, and they're moved by that. I love surprises. This is one of the things that folks who work with me know, that I do surprises all the time. Surprise people. Let them be waiting for the next thing. Let them be caught off guard with a fun little day off that you give people, that you take them all bowling or something special you do. Surprises make people feel like, what? The places we walk in, I can't wait to come to work. Something fun might happen today. And indeed, the person I work with is willing to make this a fun place. I love this website, thefuntheory.com. And they've done little experiments all over the world where if they make it fun, people are more likely to do it. Not a lot of folks walked up the stairs when it was just a plain set of stairs and they had an escalator to go up. But when they created, and I know you don't have quite the money to build a sound piano-like staircase where you're working, but they did that. And they made the piano for the staircase. And what happened was, when people stepped on those stairs, it actually made the sound. And they jumped on the stairs and created songs. And literally everybody went from taking the escalator to taking the stairs. Why did they do that? For health reasons. They wanted people to exercise more, and that was a way to get people to make it fun. I challenge folks who want to do pollution or trash efforts on their campus. You can put up more signs saying throw out the trash. You can put basketball hoops over trash cans. And if there's basketball hoops over trash cans, they'll want to slam dunk. They'll want to shoot it in. And if they miss, they won't want to be known that they missed the shot. They'll put it back in. Make it fun. And indeed, I think you're going to get more from folks. Think about the power of language. Many of you have seen in hotels these signs to try to get people to use their towels again. Well, here's what they found in one study, that how they worded that message and how we talk to people, the way we word it, has a profound impact on how people feel. We know that titles matter. And when we have a title that makes people feel like, this is an elevated position, it sort of pumps them up a little bit. Language is so critical. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But when they literally changed the message on the placard, you could see people at the end became 3 times more likely to reuse their towels. That's what we want. I want us to be and thinkers rather than but thinkers. A lot of times we say, well, but that won't work, or but what about this, or but. Anytime you say but, you've actually negated everything that person has said. Be an and thinker. Yeah, and build off their ideas, or offer that critique in a way that indeed doesn't make them feel like you've negated. Language is so critical. Be an and thinker rather than a but thinker. And remember, intent doesn't equal impact. Sometimes we may say things that land on people in ways that hurt. And as I mentioned before about apologizing, don't get defensive. Don't say, well, I didn't mean it that way, or you took it the wrong way. Sometimes we don't realize how it lands. I worked with a coach who one time for his track team who said to his young women on his track team, we got to get your bodies in better shape and exercise. And every woman on the team heard him say, you just called us fat. And he didn't mean to. They started having eating disorders and suicidal ideations, a lot of pain happened. And he said, I didn't mean to hurt them. I said, I know you didn't, but you didn't mean to, but you did. And so we have to recognize when people bring us those concerns, to listen, to hear them out. Don't jump in too quickly. Let them speak. Sometimes all people want to know is that you're willing to hear them out. Sometimes they walk in angry, and if you just let them talk, and you don't say anything, they'll be just fine. They just want you to know how they felt. And they want to know that you're willing to listen. Remember, attitudes are contagious. Make yours worth catching. Think about the spirit you bring in, the language that you use. And as I said before, we're going to make mistakes, but you can crash and burn, or you can crash and learn. And so think about ways that you can always find a positive to the situation, to always build off it. And tell people, we're going to make mistakes, and cheer them on. If folks are scared to make mistakes because you're going to attack them, they won't take risks at all. Cheer them when they make mistakes and tell them that's how people learn. WD-40 is called WD-40 because they messed up the formula 39 times. And they got it right the 40th time. And they actually celebrated that it took them a while to get there, but they got there. People know you cheer them on, they'll keep going and take greater risks. Some of you may have seen this in some of the presentations I do. It's called the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument. And I mentioned before about really getting to know people. And I love this because what it says is, and many of you have done Strengths Quest and True Colors and Myers-Briggs, but this one I think in its simplicity is so powerful. It mentions there's 4 different personalities: the blues, the greens, the reds, and yellows. And while we may be a combination of them, there's probably one that's a little bit more dominant than others. And so the blues are what I call the what people. These are the folks who like data. And they're not ones who send emojis on their text. They don't send emails that say, have a great day with 4 smiley faces. They go, got it. They want the data. They don't need hugs. They don't necessarily need maybe as much of the verbal affirmation. They just want to know the facts so they can feel comfortable. They want to know not just this is what you're saying, but there's evidence. So keep that in mind. When you want people to do something and they're not clear about why it's being done, if you can provide some data, then they're going to go, I get it now. It's not just you saying it. Somebody else supports this. And the greens are, I call the how people. The folks that really want things to be organized. They like structure, agendas, rules, to-do lists. If you're that green person listening in the call, you know that you go to a meeting and they say, we're just going to hang out and talk, no agenda. You freak out because you want to know where we're going. Why am I here? And if you're not clear about why we're here, you're less likely to engage and do it. Doesn't mean you're not motivated, doesn't mean you're not a good team player, but it's hard when we don't feel respected to want to be able to give our best because we don't know where it's going. We're uncomfortable. So sometimes in meetings, I make sure we have a very clear agenda. Even if it's not my thing, somebody needs that. We may divert from it, but they just need to know walking in, there's a purpose here. So I feel comfortable. I can be at my best. Now, the reds are the who people. They're the ones who want to hug, and they feed off of that energy of relationships. They need it to be fun. They need to be interactive. And then the yellows are the ones, if there's a meeting with a supervisor who says there's 10 minutes left, no one has any questions, we get out early, everybody agrees, don't say a word. We're getting out early. But this person, of course, has a million questions because they're thinkers. They sit back. They're the ones who are quiet for 4 hours or 4 months in a meeting. But then when they talk, they got something powerful because they've been taking it all in. See, yellows sometimes are not often picked as leaders because they tend to be a little more quiet or thinking, or they ask more penetrating questions. They don't get called on as much. They don't get brought to the forefront. Same with blues. They don't rah-rah as much as my greens and reds. But remember to find the talent. There's greatness in that blue. That blue might not smile all the time, but they might love their job and are proud of their job. And if we don't make them feel that way because they don't smile, we're disrespecting what they're bringing to the table. If we tell the wise, oh my gosh, just do it because I say so, or you ask so many questions, even if we say it jokingly, they may shut up. And remember, they're watching everything. So they might have an insight that you have no idea and you hadn't thought about before. Now, great leaders incorporate all 4 elements. Whether it's every meeting or everything that you're thinking about, always make sure that all 4 elements are present in everything you do. See, the one diagonal to is probably the one that drives you craziest, but you need that. And great teams capitalize on the strength of all their members. And so think about in a meeting having a moment where we can not just walk in and get to the agenda, but how about we do some hugs or high fives or celebrations of good news? And my reds feel good. And then you got the agenda, but there's some data and there's some chance for reflection. Maybe you use the Poll Everywhere website where people can post anonymous questions. It's a great website, polleverywhere.com, where people, we often ask people, do you have any questions? And some people are scared to admit they don't know something. Imagine that. If you're sitting in a meeting and you think everybody gets it but you, and you don't want to admit you're not clear, or maybe you might be the person who's comfortable, but a lot of people don't. So what if you use that website, Poll Everywhere, where people can text questions or comments they have throughout the meeting? That way they can always feel like their voices are being heard their concerns are being addressed, our questions are being answered, and that indeed everybody can function and be at their best. A lot of people love org charts. I get it, but I don't really get into org charts, because what happens to org charts is it's static, and it doesn't really show us the relationships between people. I want to challenge you. See, an org chart, you think about it, the people report to somebody else. You're only supposed to report to them. But if you go laterally, there's some people you need on your campus. They don't report to you. You don't report to them. They're not part of, staff meetings you have. But if you work in compliance, for example, you definitely want to make sure that you're connected to academic folks across this campus and that those relationships are built. If you work in fundraising, you definitely got to make sure that when you bring people on campus, that the police officers and police force on campus are prepared to make the right introductions and greetings. So really, I want to challenge you to think about your social networks. Think about your social networks. Who are you connected with, and where on campus are you not connected? Just because you don't have them in your unit, just because they're not on your org chart, doesn't mean you don't need that relationship. First of all, because it's just good. It's good to be human and connected to people who have so much to offer us. But also professionally, it's valuable for us to think about who on that campus do I need to know? Who really can make sure that the things we need to get done, that we're connected with them? And continue to grow and build those relationships. Every company has a board of directors. What's yours? Who are the people that you meet with on a regular basis that, just like a CEO still has that board of directors to give her or him feedback? Who are the people that will be honest with you? Who are the people that, whether you like it or not, are going to tell you the truth? Who are the people that have some wisdom and experience in different domains? Maybe you're a great budget person, but you're not as great when it comes to the legal aspect of your job. Find somebody in your board of directors you meet with on a regular basis, whether it's individually or collectively, who's a legal expert. Find the areas that you're weak in and find people that you can meet with regularly to help you grow as a leader and will hold you accountable. Because leaders keep learning. Leaders keep learning. So I didn't give you, so far like the 10 steps you need to do this in a meeting and do that. Really what I want to start thinking about is, who are you? A lot of times we ask little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? I love asking children, who do you want to be when you grow up? I think that question is more penetrating. Yes, it speaks to maybe the career you want, but who do you want to be? And so think about that as a leader. Who do you want to be? And what are the things you need to develop personally and professionally? So that regardless of the role, people will find you. If you're great at what you do and build relationships, they'll find you. You don't even have to apply for jobs. They'll find you. Who do you want to be? And what's the skill set that you need to keep developing? I have something called the sandwich technique. And the sandwich technique is simply when you have to offer critique. So we're going to talk just a bit about when there are challenges. And I like to believe, again, that when people feel like, they have a voice in the matter. I met with one of my mentees. Let me go off for a second. Met with a mentee recently who's a PhD student. And his research advisor is a friend of mine also. And told me, well, this guy's kind of turning some stuff a little bit late. He's kind of being a little slacky with getting assignments in. His work is amazing, but he's just kind of a little bit off schedule. So I met with him. And I sat with him and I said, well, let's just talk. So, you're finishing your first year of a PhD program. See, I didn't come in right off starting negative. I didn't come in critiquing. I came in and said, what's the narrative that your professors and colleagues have of you? Here you are becoming a PhD and you're going to go off into the academic career. Your narrative has already started. People are talking about you. So what are they saying about you that's wonderful? And he identified that his work is great. He's built wonderful relationships. I said, excellent. What is it that people are saying or might say that you want to work on a little bit? And he goes, well, you know what? I think probably people feel like I turn things in late. And I realize sometimes I am kind of, coming a little bit behind schedule. And I went, oh. And he goes, yes, I think I really need to work on it. I didn't have to say it. He did. I didn't have to say it. He did. He recognized it for himself. And he felt valued because we started with something positive. That's the sandwich technique. When you have to critique somebody, first of all, praise in public, critique in private. Praise in public, critique in private. People, let's celebrate folks when they do great so that everybody gets to cheer them on and pull people aside. And the bread on a sandwich is denoted as the positive stuff here. Start with something positive. Let people know you recognize the good that they're doing or something about them personally. Then in the middle is that, turkey or the peanut butter and jelly. If you ever critique, always use I messages rather than you did wrong or you messed up. Here's what I noticed or here's what I feel. Remember to be specific. If you say things like, well, I don't like your attitude, problematic. People need to know, what are you talking about? So if you say, that day when you came in and you slammed that door, I was in a meeting with a major funder. And it just, created some discomfort for me and for my guest. Be specific, and be using I messages rather than attacks. And then end with something positive. Make sure folks walk out feeling good, that you have acknowledged where they are and who they are and can move forward. It's what I call the all clear method. Real quickly, I know we're getting towards the end and I want to have plenty of time for Q&A. But all clear stands for, well, the A is assess and analyze. When you think somebody is really ticked you off, rather than go right at them, think about it for a second. Do I need to talk about it now? What's the best timing? Should I do this now or later? Maybe I need to ask them, are you ready to talk? Because sometimes we want to talk. You all know you've been in a relationship and you want to confront your partner about something and you're ready to talk. They're not ready. And you try to force them, it's not going to go well. Think about the context. Where can we go? Maybe we take a walk. I love taking walks with folks, especially for tough conversations. It's a little more liberating. We're not staring at each other and they're worried about my facial expressions. So think about, do I need to do it? When do I need to do it? And how do I do it? The L is for look at situations from all sides. Remember, there's three sides to every story: yours, theirs, and the truth. We all believe we got all the right answers, and they do too. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. And always, be thinking about the problem, over the personal in this case. Don't get, your own personal feelings. Think about what the problem is, the challenge that I'm facing, and really try to see it from their point of view. And think about where maybe you're missing something because you don't have the whole story. The next L is to locate the good in the matter. What could the benefit be? The Japanese word for crisis has two kanjis, two characters. One means danger, and the other means opportunity. You ever had a blow up with a close friend? You might have actually become better friends afterwards. Think about what can be good in the situation before you even talk to them. So the ALL is before you have that conversation. How could this be a good thing for me? Because that way I approach it with a much more positive mindset. So before you talk, to calm down and take a breath. Now think about the person over the problem. I want to make sure that I don't attack them. I want to make sure that I'm operating in a positive sphere so I don't say something, sarcastic or a little passive aggressive comment that hurts their feelings. So think about taking a breath when you have to say something. And then make sure you lead with I messages. Again, using those I messages about thinking of the understanding that you're clear about what it is you want to say. Encourage their voice. Remember, I don't want to win over people. I want people to be won over. And that's a different thing. Winning over people is to prove, I got to win and you're wrong. But when you win people over, when people feel like, I realized I was wrong, or thank you for at least acknowledging the good in me, they're more willing to admit their mistakes when they feel like they have a victory rather than they feel like they're losing all the time. Actively listen. Really listen. Listen to what's beneath. And if we shut up more, they'll share. As the social work principle says, the presenting issue is never the real issue. There's something down beneath. Maybe if they're acting out a little bit, they're not just a jerk. Maybe they're hurting because something's going on with a child. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but if we let them get there, then maybe we understand and respond differently. Maybe they'll be willing to apologize themselves if they feel like you really care about who they are, not what they have done wrong. What can you learn by that conversation? And then finally, think win-win. Resolve it with compromise as much as possible. And remember this, if people can walk out with some kind of a win, even if you get 90% of the win, they have to change their behavior or turn in a report when you want it. If there's something that makes them feel like they have a victory, something even small, people walk out of there differently. And remember, when things get challenging, this great phrase, what can we do to fix it? What can we do? Sometimes you have to just direct people from the emotional anger that they're expressing to the cognitive side of solutions. So challenge people, what can we do to fix it? And John Gottman, I mentioned before, has a 5-to-1 ratio. You can use this in your personal or professional relationships. All of our relationships, to be that are healthy, according to his research, are better when there's a 5-to-1 positive to negative ratio. If you have to confront some folks on what's going wrong, give them some good stuff. Give them some positive accolades and recognition. Everybody loves change. Everybody, as long as everyone has to do the changing. To recognize that change is difficult, especially when you want to implement change. Remember, you're doing it on your time frame. You're doing it when you want to do it. It might take a little time for folks to get comfortable and to know how to adjust to that. I mean, if anybody's ever had a chance to travel to a country where you drive on the left side of the road, you know how difficult it is to change the mindset you're accustomed to. And I love this example from these roundabouts you might have seen before. Roundabouts actually reduce traffic fatalities by 90%. It's a better system, but we don't do them very much in this country because people are scared of what's new. So as you lead people into change, be patient with them. Certainly be optimistic and hopeful and guide people and challenge them to move forward, but also recognize that it can be scary. Sometimes people don't change not because they're jerks and they're resistant. They're just scared. They don't know what it means. Maybe they don't have that skill set. Maybe they don't know how to use that particular software. Maybe they're unfamiliar with that concept and they're scared. Always think about what maybe they need in order to be comfortable with that kind of change. And this is just a nice little graph that talks about, as you make change, keep this in mind. Some folks will jump right on board, the early innovators and the early adopters. But the trick is to get, how do you move past those folks who are automatically on your side, who are just rolling with you, to get to the point where they indeed want to jump on board? See, too often we focus on what they call the laggards, the people that are resistant to you. We put a lot of energy in trying to convert people who are not probably going to get on board anyway at first. Really think about, who are those folks, not the cheerleaders for you. That's great. You got to cheer them on. But who are the people who are on the fence? Who are those people that aren't quite sure? And how do you reach them? So as you implement change, yes, cheer on the people that got your back, and think about how you're going to get those people that are opposed to you. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But really focus on that early majority. How do you get enough people who are fence sitters to believe in it? If they feel like something is good about to happen, if they notice that, wow, these changes are really going to benefit me and everybody else, then you can get to that tipping point. Because once you get the majority of folks on board, then you know what happens? The other people who are lagging behind go, I want to be a part of that. They feel the social pressure, and you don't have to convince them. They indeed will want to jump on board. This is another graph as you're making change to think about, again, those who are on our side and those who are opposers. And think about messaging. It's really critical that we indeed craft messages and sayings and expressions that reach those different audiences. Your zeros and ones are on your side, so you got to mobilize and energize them. Make sure you got things that sort of get them excited and ready to roll. Think about themes and messages, those twos and threes. It's really critical that they feel like the message you're getting about what you're doing is clear and is provable in terms of the benefits it's going to have. Zeros and ones already are on your side. They don't need to be proven that it's going to work. The twos and threes do. So they might need some different messages to get there. And then always remember how you're going to neutralize. The fours and fives are going to be saying stuff about you. You don't have to attack them, but how can you neutralize the effect? Knowing what they're going to say, how can you then create? If they say, well, this isn't going to do any good. If you have an early success, you've neutralized the naysayers. So find a way to do something that shows that what those naysayers are saying really isn't working. Because what you want is a concept of social norming. When people think about Loyola Chicago basketball team and Sister Jean, ain't nobody know about that school too much before they started winning in the NCAA tournament, but everybody became a fan. That's what social norming is. When people see success, they want to be a part of it. Generations ago, nobody wore seatbelts, and now I got into a car with my nephew a couple of days ago, and he was like, we're not moving until you put your seatbelt on. I had forgotten to do so. It's now the norm to wear seatbelts. And I love, before the Aflac came up with a duck campaign, only 10% of the population knew what Aflac sold. Everybody knows about it because of that duck. That duck was fun to say Aflac, and people wanted to say it, and it became the norm to know about Aflac. When people feel like there's a fun, positive message, there's something unique that you're doing, they want to jump on board. So what is the thing that you do, the sayings and sounds? What are the things that people feel like, wow, as a leader, you're making it fun to be here? There's a great study that found kids don't eat enough fruit. And they put the fruit in elementary schools next to the cookies. And kids are going to choose cookie over fruit. But they put the fruit in this one study at the end of the line with a fun sign that said, take one. And kids started eating 3 times more fruit. How you position the message has a profound impact on people's willingness to jump on board. High Point University tripled their freshman enrollment in 3 years. Why? Because they did things differently. And the president hired someone whose job title was Director of Wow. That's right. Their title was Director of Wow. And their job was to make people say wow. They had free dry cleaning on campus. They had all this fun stuff going on. And they had an ice cream truck that rolled around giving out ice cream. When you were 9 years old, ice cream truck goes, yeah, you get excited. That's the wow factor. Little things. It's the same ice cream that people could have gotten in the cafeteria when they finished their meals, but it made it fun. People want to get on board. And remember, it might not necessarily have been so cool 20 years ago for a lot of men to wear pink, but, that breast cancer campaign made it so that men want to wear pink. We can message things in a way that makes people want to get on board. You don't have to make them want to do it. When they feel like it's a wow factor, when they feel like there's a benefit to them, when they feel there's something concrete that's exciting and fun, what's your wow? As a leader, what's your wow? What is the thing that makes people want to be around you and be inspired by you? What's the thing that you do that makes the place fun to work at? And when people say, oh, we just, trying to make fun, Google gets it. Fortune 500 companies get it now. If you're not making it fun and interesting, people have choices, and they're going to go somewhere else. And so almost done here real quickly. I just want you to make sure you take care of yourselves. And there's something I've been reading up about called decision fatigue, that, at the end of the day, we're tired. Why? Because we make 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000. Remember, if you go to Cheesecake Factory, that menu is like 900 pages long. You get stressed out. There's too many choices. And when people have too many choices, actually, it really can create more stress. That's why Trader Joe's has 7 brands of peanut butter, not 20. They realize that if there's a little bit less choice, still options, still choices, too much can stress people out. Here's a study that showed that as the day goes on, the favorability of judges' decisions for defendants goes down. My friends, if you have to be at court at 4 o'clock for any kind of thing, get a continuance. Get it in the morning. Judges are happier in the morning. As the day goes on, think about how many tough decisions they make, how many stressful things they've encountered, how many people have said things that irritated them. And by the end of the day, they're drained. Literally, as the day goes on, we eat less healthy. We start out with I'll have 1 grape for breakfast. And by the end of the day at 9 o'clock, I'll get that triple cheeseburger. So literally schedule meetings perhaps earlier in the day if you can, so people can be at their best. Literally what we wear, President Obama only had 2 types of suits. He wore a dark blue suit and then a black suit. And he said, or gray suit, sorry. He said, literally, I'm not going to stress out about what I wear. Sometimes we're so stressed out about what we wear in the morning. We got to take, do I wear the green shirt or the red shirt? Or what about the purple tie and this and that? That we're tired before we even leave work. We're irritated and we're worried. What if you set your clothes out the night before and you iron them the night before so you don't worry about putting a hole in your shirt or your jacket? If you set things out the night before, you've made less decisions to start the day, and you're starting with a fresh attitude. And so I've got some friends. I show up out of town all the time to try to meet up with people. And my friends here, a wonderful married couple that just had a child. And I showed up one day. I was like, let's go to dinner tonight. They said it's date night. I'm like, well, you're married. Why do you need date night? They're like, if we want to stay married, we make date night. Every Friday, no matter what, they have date night. What's the thing you want to plug into your schedule? Go watch a video called Little Rocks, Big Rocks, and you'll see what I'm talking about. What are the things that you have to do each week for you? And schedule it in and say, I'm not going to miss this. If it's a yoga class or a meditation thing, make sure you schedule that time and hold yourself to it. Oh, something came up. You know what? Oftentimes things don't come up if we don't let them. Make sure that time is for you. And so let me pause. I think we're about 40 minutes in. And so hopefully we've got some time to do some Q&A and any kind of comments, critiques, anything you'd like to say. But again, authentic, be you, let people know they can be themselves, be willing to admit it when you're wrong, make sure people own stuff. Anything you own, you treat better than something you rent. So when they feel like their voice is heard, you don't have to make them work. They want to do it. They want to do it and to be a part of that. And then be transformational. Create that wow factor. What is the thing you can do that makes people get excited every single day when they come into work? So let's turn it back over to Darnell.
Thank you, Dr. Greenfield. Definitely a very powerful message that you have and that you shared with us. I took a lot of notes for sure. So we do have some questions from the audience. You talked about how language is so critical. And if you could just talk about how do you help others understand just how important the words are?
I think a couple of things. One, we model that. And we make sure that our language really reflects the best of who we are and what we want from folks. Think about the power of that message in terms of whether it motivates people or is meant to draw back. But challenge people maybe to come up with, here's the things that we say around here. And here's also the things we ought not say to each other. Maybe as a team, you kind of collaboratively come up with that list and talk about it. This are the words that we know affirm each other. Maybe you come up with slogans and sayings that people can say to each other and high five each other. But I think when people have it concrete, they realize, that here's some things that, as we all agree, that can really be kind of hurtful or can be that subtle passive-aggressive comment. And then also remember, when people say things that might be hurtful or problematic, just say ouch. Don't come at them. The power of the word ouch actually is like a pause button. It lets people know that, wait a minute, something landed on me funny, and let's talk it out. So I think if we role model it, if we identify, model that, if we're able to kind of identify collectively things that we want to say, and things that we feel that, really aren't the kind of things that represent our best. Come up with slogans and sayings that kind of keep affirming those types of messages. And then also realize that sometimes people don't know what they're saying, or they don't know that it might be hurtful. And we might go, well, of course they know. That's not a word we use anymore. Some folks don't know that. They may not know the new language that those of us who, like to see ourselves as woke may have. Then maybe they don't know that certain things land on people certain ways. And so if you're able to be patient with them and listen and talk it out with them, I think they're more likely to again, be won over and they'll want to make that change.
Another question that we have, you mentioned the power of language. With today's student athletes coming from diverse backgrounds, how could we use the power of language to impact the today's student athletes? And I know particularly with your background in hip hop culture, if you could talk about that too.
Yeah, I mean, so, similar to what we just talked about, but I think, again, it's so critical for our young people to know that we're not going to say things like, well, I understand what you're going through when I was your age, because they're like, you're not, you got to hear where I'm coming from and to kind of honor my perspective. I've even actually moved towards language when specifically for young people, but particularly for males. A lot of males are uncomfortable with feeling like they need help. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting help, but I use the word support as opposed to help. Everybody wants support. Sometimes people may feel like, I need you to help me. And you're trying to think I'm helpless. You're trying to say that I'm, so, that language can be really critical. And again, be mindful of not trying to use language that's not authentically yours. Sometimes you get folks who are like, I found the new word. I'm going to start using, when On Fleek was popular. If it isn't you, it don't have to be you. You don't have to try to sound like anything different than you are. Be your authentic self. But if you're able to learn some of the language that to young people that matters to them, first of all, you'll know what it means, and so you might not be offended if it's different than you think. And then you may be able to, occasionally incorporate if it sounds appropriate to be able to do so. But this generation is very mindful of language. That's why Twitter and social media, they're putting everything out there, and they're going to post. If you say something that's not cool to them, you send an email. I've seen presidents send emails to students that were offensive, and those emails ended up on Twitter and caused a lot of problems. So use language that's affirming, that believes in them, that encourages them. And then again, really think of ways that you can understand their language so they feel like indeed you want to know their world.
Another question we have from the audience. I believe many of the people are sensitive to straight talk. How do you let an individual you are talking to them how do you talk to an individual so that they know that you care as opposed to attacking them?
Yeah, so hopefully some of the things that I mentioned. I'm sorry? We're good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully, again, if we use iMessages, we give people space to be able to share and recognize that, maybe we realize that it's coming from a place. Sometimes when people feel attacked, it's because that thing is they're so passionate about it, so excited about it. And if they feel like we've said, well, and they're like, wait a minute now, you're taking away something that matters to me. Sometimes we do just have to say things to folks, and we just have to let them know where things stand or what's going on. But often we can, again, using iMessages, again, sort of thinking about ways to affirm people first before we come at the critique, that may indeed create that space that allows them to not feel under attack. And if there's a moment they say they feel attacked, listen to them. Let them share that. Let them get that out. Apologize if necessary. Sometimes we may even need to, even if you're not sure if you said something was wrong, maybe an authentic apology that says, I was not trying to hurt you. I'm sorry. I value you. I care about you. And I want this to be the best possible environment for you. And you may need to give them some space to be able to think about it and come back to you afterwards.
You talked about what's your wow. If you could just explain, what is your wow?
Well, if you're talking about me, if you've ever been to any of my presentations, the wow is that we are up playing and moving, and folks remember all kinds of games and activities we do. I actually had a wonderful situation a couple months ago. Finished a presentation with student athletes, and it went so great. They bonded and connected, and it was such a powerful and transformative thing, watching them really love on each other as they opened up and shared some of the challenges they were facing. And one of the student athletes came up to me and said, you know what, I noticed you didn't even talk that much for the last 45 minutes. It was mostly us talking. I was like, that's my point. The wow was that they did it for themselves, that they felt like, that they were empowered to have their voices matter, and that they could really do this work for each other, and that this was a community of love and care, and that I didn't need to do it from the outside. I just sort of, helped direct traffic to get them there. Because remember, I'm gone after that day, but they're always there. And so that wow factor was them really recognizing we had the power in them. So if you've had a chance to be in workshops, we're going to interact and play and hug and scream and yell and sing and do all that, because I think that's what sets me apart. There are people who are much better speakers than I in terms of delivering, 1 hour powerful lecture. They can, all the emotions, and they have powerful stories from their lives. There are people who are better than me. I think that what I do that I'm really proud of, that I think is a wow, is that you're going to remember that we had some fun and that you learned about doing it, and then we built community. And that's something that a lot of people is a wow for them in a presentation because they think they're going to get lectured at for an hour or 2 hours. My presentations usually go about 2 hours for student athletes. And you know those students walk in 2 freaking hours. They are pissed off. And sometimes I'll be listening outside. They don't know I'm the speaker. And they're like, man, this is going to be such a waste of my time. And right off the bat, when I come in playing hip-hop music and we're getting up, giving high tens to each other and playing, that's the wow. Right off the bat, wow, something different is about to happen here. With my staff, we would, again, do those random things on Monday. I may run around with Hershey's Kisses and just sort of, do something fun. Or I may all of a sudden, at the middle of the day, I would sort of get people together and maybe we'd just have a chance to share some good news. Even for 5 or 10 minutes, you have no idea. And people sometimes need to be told we love them and believe in them. So the wow factor is the surprise too, but the wow factor is making it fun and interesting so that people want to learn.
We have another question that came in. You talked about the quadrants, the what, why, who, etc. When we talk about leadership and leading from where you are, how could someone who is outside of the athletics industry get inside the athletics industry, maximizing those 4 quadrants that you talked about? How could they use that as a tool to get into the athletic industry?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I'd have to think a little bit more about specifically, the roadmaps. And I think that goes back to the relationships I mentioned before, of really making sure that we start thinking before we, want to get into a particular field. Where do I need to go? What are the conferences that are happening where I can meet people that otherwise I wouldn't get a chance to connect with? Start laying that foundation. Start building, that bridge for yourself. And realize that it may take a little bit of time, but also connect with people who are different from you, who are not necessarily in that same quadrant as you. My wow factors, I changed my glasses just for fun. Now you know, and the other ones were sliding up my nose. So anyway, I'm just going to make it easier for me, but have a little bit of fun. But think about it, intentionally reach out to people who aren't in that same quadrant as you. If you're a yellow, find you a green. I mean, greens are like, let's get it done. You're like, but why? Sometimes the green will be that person that pushes you. Because see, sometimes yellows hold back. They think too much. They overthink it. And again, there's wonderful qualities about yellows, but that might be a challenge for some of you who are yellows on this call right now. You may feel like, I'm always so busy looking, I never leap. That green is that one who will say, go for it, believe in yourself. See, that green who's opposite to you will guide you, will push you. Yellow, greens, you need a yellow. Because while you're trying to go so fast, the yellows will be like, pump the brakes. You need to think this through a little bit more. Same with our blues and reds. Reds are going to put in reports. They're like, oh, we felt so wonderful. We had a great time. Everybody's happy. And the blues will say, you have no data. And if you don't have any data, we can't send this to the NCAA. We can't send it off to the president. We need data to show that it works. And the blues, when you write reports that's all technical and you want to do a presentation with all the facts at the next staff meeting, that red will say, add a little bit of fun in there. You have a great presentation, all these wonderful information, but you need to make it interesting and fun. And that'll help make the presentation better. So we need to intentionally look out for people who are in that opposite quadrant to grow. Make sure you got folks who are all different personalities around you. First of all, you'll learn more from them. They'll be able to mentor and guide you in certain ways. And then you'll also find out that people from different experiences and backgrounds are in those different quadrants. Now, I remind when I work with track programs, your sprinters are mostly reds. They want fun, high energy. Your life is 10-second, 30-second intervals. Distance runners are more likely to be blues and greens because they got 2 hours to be out there running. And so they have to be indeed patient. They have to learn to be thinking this through and analyzing data in a whole different way. And so even on teams, we have to recognize that. But I think if we can surround ourselves with people who indeed are different quadrants and are different in their experiences, and then, of course, as I talk about in my message on inclusive excellence, diversity makes us stronger and better. Find people who are indeed different from you in lots of different ways. It opens up doors, pathways that you wouldn't have thought about. And also when it comes to mentor, so, people who've got backgrounds, if you don't ski, maybe you go skiing one time. Because first of all, you try something new, you might fall in love with it, and you might fall, but you might fall in love with it. And if you go skiing, the people who hang out skiing, it's not better or worse than the people who hang out with you as you go bowling, but that's a whole different set of people who have all different sets of contacts. Think about it. The people that are there are not your friends. And it's what Mark Granovetter calls the strength of weak ties. We get a lot of our jobs and opportunities, not from our best friends, but people we sort of know a little bit. So if you're hanging out with people who ski and that's not your background, they then can introduce you to a whole bunch of other folks that you wouldn't know. and can be that conduit to the career that you're thinking about getting into. So really, really grow that social network and be intentional about who's part of your network, who's part of your board of directors, and who indeed is part of your everyday life.
All right, last question that we have, and thank you, everybody. We all know college athletics is a competitive industry. As a leader, how do you ensure your competitiveness does not create tension with those you work with who also want to succeed?
Yeah, that's a real critical question. I mean, it's something to be mindful of. Some people thrive off that competition, and kind of like those quadrants, you might have folks that if there's too much competition, they recoil, they get scared. And so that you want to have a blend. I mean, there's some ways that we can have some competition that sort of motivates, but also find other ways. People are not only motivated and do better because there's competition. Sometimes they're motivated just because it feels good, and we want to really, we want people to be happy. Some people are motivated because they just want others to be proud of them. And so, really think about intentionally inserting different mechanisms, ways that we can measure our progress in competitive ways we can measure it in different ways, but for us to be able to capitalize on different kinds of mechanisms to get that done. Because indeed, you don't want folks to be so scared that if we lose, we failed. And competition can make people feel like it's winners and losers. We can all win in that kind of collaborative mindset. So, be thinking about that. And again, really knowing who your team is and what they're about, I think will allow you to craft those messages so that indeed you can come up with a whole bunch of different strategies to make that happen. I'm looking at my clock. We still got 2 minutes left. Anybody else got any questions or that last one? That last one, Darnell?
Yeah.
I want to maximize our time.
That was the last one. Have
okay.
a lot of fun, right? Have a lot of
wonderful
fun.
questions, though.
Well, on behalf of MOA, yes, sir. On behalf of MOA and its leadership, we thank you, Dr. Greenfield, for taking the time with us today to share your expertise. That's all the time that we have for today. If you have any questions regarding MOA membership in general, please don't hesitate to contact either Cassandra Garcia or Julia Work at the national office. As a reminder, I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing all of you at the MOA Symposium in Washington, D.C. in June. And Dr. Greenfield, I see you have your contact information up there, so feel free to contact Dr. Greenfield at your leisure. Take care, everybody, and talk to you later.
Thank you.